Hey everybody, happy Sunday to you. Tim from Alpha Wolf Trading coming at you with this week's market overview and stocks to watch for next week. At least some earning stocks to watch. Not the full list of stocks but that I've been doing for the last couple of weeks, but some earning stocks to keep an eye on. We've got a light week ahead in terms of economic data that could impact the markets. We do have PMI, ISM, non-manufacturing job openings, consumer credit, weekly jobless claims, wholesale inventories, and PPI, which those things could impact the markets, but it's pretty light week in terms of economic data. Uh, but we can still have a lot of action, right? Well, we got what's happening with China. Expect more rhetoric about that, and then of course we do have earnings that continue. Don't have as many big boy names as we've had already, but we've still got some companies that could move certain sectors. Right, we've got Disney. I think is a big one, and then we've got Kronos, and that could be big for the marijuana space. GW Pharma, Take Two Interactive, Activision. I mean, we've got some pretty big names that are reporting. Match.com, which has been on a big run, that one's reporting. Win. And then we've got a lot of small cap names that are going to be reporting as well. So Dean Foods is reporting that one was near bankruptcy. Actually, has had a very nice move into these earnings. That could be short lived, but definitely some stocks to keep an eye on. Teva is another one I think that is interesting. AMC, but you get the idea here. Not as many big names, but definitely some stocks to keep an eye on. And then let's see what else we've got going on. So let's just take a look real quick at the sectors, the individual sectors. So the the threat of a potential 10% add-on to China, that definitely hit the markets. The Fed, their presentation this week was not all that impressive by Jerome Powell. That seemed to, it almost came across to me as like they just don't know what the heck they're doing, and I think that made the markets a bit nervous. So we got a bit of a pullback after the Fed statement, right? And we got that cut. And then it just intensified after Trump said he's going to raise that 10% on China. So if you look at what's happening in the indexes, we've got some things to be a little bit concerned about here. So IBB is testing this trend line. Kind of talked about it last week. It was trying to hold it as support below the 200-day moving average. Actually closed below the 50-day. Now you've got the 50 below the 200-day. So this IBB is looking a little weak here, and if we lose this trend line, then I would be looking at that $100 mark to see if we can hold that as potential support. But testing that trend line and looking a little weak. IWM, we actually broke through the trend line, and we have closed below the 50-day, testing the 200-day as potential support, with a lot of smaller names or smaller companies reporting this week. Maybe that gives us some fuel to get back above that trend line, get back above the 50-day. If they disappoint, then we could be coming back down to test this 145 area. 140 to 145 area, would be looking at that as an area for potential support. IYT breaking below the 50-day and testing the 200-day as support, could be heading down to test this short-term trend line here. QQQs, Apple, good earnings and pulled back, right? Several names, good earnings and pulled back, testing the 50-day as potential support, could be coming down to test this trend line. And then if that trend line can't hold, we could be looking at a pullback to the 200-day and somewhere around this 170 area as potential price support. So seeing some weakness out there across the board. How long it lasts, who knows? But typically August, September, October can be rough months for the markets, and we definitely have a setup out there right now with this, the trade tariff stuff and the rhetoric between China and Trump. And we've got some geopolitical stuff going on that is concerning. So, this probably is more of a time to consider short-term trading opportunities, not really looking to, go all in on long positions for a long-term hold. I think short-term trading opportunities, maybe start to dip toes in some stocks that you would like to own on sale, but I wouldn't be going all in because who knows how long a pullback may last. So SMH, AMD reported actually pretty decent. The guide was a little light. SMH pulling back, right? So seeing some weakness there. Maybe coming down to test the 50-day moving average right around 110. Could have some potential price support there. If that fails, then we could be heading down to test the trend line. And if that fails, then we've got the 200-day moving average just below. S&P 500 pulling back to the 50-day, trying to hold on to that. Also testing this trend line, right? So we break below that. Next stop could be right around this 200-day moving average and right around this recent low in June, which would put that at about a 10% correction. So not unlikely, or not uncommon, right, to have 5-10% corrections, but those would be the next areas of potential support that I would be keeping an eye on. Now, with all that being said, TVIX, UVXY, volatility, we can see there was a clear spike in volatility this week, and these could continue to be in play. So short-term trading opportunities, don't really want to chase these things. If they gap up in the morning, don't just go piling in, right? Look for an opportunity, some kind of an intraday setup. But TVIX and UVXY, they were on the list last week. I actually missed a good trade in it. I tried a couple of times TVIX. There were people in the chat room that did manage to hit a nice little trade in UVXY. But I would look at these things for potential continuation. They're testing the 50-day. Like I said, short-term trading opportunity. You don't want to go all in and hold these things overnight. They have built-in decay. They are actually, designed to go to zero, and then they just, do a reverse split. They do reverse splits. If you look at the charts, they do reverse splits quite often. But if there is some real fear in the market that lasts for a while, these things can have some pretty amazing runs. So definitely worth having on your radar if fear becomes more apparent in the market. So XAR, aerospace defense, one of the leading sectors, pulling back to the 50-day moving average, testing it as potential support, looking for 100 to maybe act as price support. If it breaks below there, potentially heading back down to the 200-day moving average, and an area of price support somewhere in the $90 range. So aerospace and defense has been a very hot space. May see some continued weakness. There are a couple of names that I do like in the space that if they were to pull back, I would be looking to add to some long-term hold positions, or maybe start a long-term hold position in aerospace defense. But that sector looking like it might be in a little bit of trouble for the near term. Home builders pulling back, right? We got a rate cut, but doesn't seem to be benefiting the home builders. Tested, actually closed below the 50-day moving average. Could be looking for a pullback to this little trend line right here. We broke this trend line already, and that could be looking for a pullback maybe to the 200-day and potential price support. XLB building materials also broke below the 50-day moving average. Could be heading down towards this trend line test and potentially a 200-day moving average test. XLE, right? I've been saying it for a long time, for a while now. XLE oil energy names just can't get out of their own way, and it is a space that I think everyone wants to try, or a lot of value type investors want to try and find the bottom, and just have not been successful in doing so. Continues to look like a weak space, weak sector, broke below the trend line, below a declining 50-day, below a declining 200-day, just not looking good in that space. Financials pulling back, testing the 50-day moving average, testing the trend line, did manage to hold on to it, but kind of in an area where it could be a little bit, could get a little bit concerning if it breaks through and continues to decline. Could be coming down to test that 200-day moving average. Industrials below the 50-day, below the trend line. You see the trend here, right? Right now, definitely is a time to be cautious, if anything, right? I mean, and if you've got profits out there that you're sitting on from a nice run, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to lock in some of those profits and get some powder dry, right? Now, it would have been nicer to do that last week, but that doesn't mean that you sit and watch it all go, give it all back. I mean, if you've got some profits, take some off. You can always buy things back, right? And build some powder. Build some powder for a potential opportunity to buy things on sale. XLP, consumer discretionary, very strong space. Beyond Meat, that's getting a little bit of a whacking after the offering and their earnings, but actually have a consumer discretionary, or not consumer discretionary, but a consumer staple that is on my radar for this week. So we'll see how that plays out, but it has kind of an interesting look. XLV, healthcare, right below the 50-day, testing the trend line as potential support. Got the 200-day there as well as potential support. Consumer discretionary, testing 50-day, broke below the 50-day, testing this trend line as support. If this does not hold, then maybe we pull back, test the 200-day, maybe this area of potential price support right there. And then XOP, energy, taking out a double bottom. XOP, oil and exploration, just not looking all that great. And I didn't put on retail, but let's take a look at that. XRT. Testing this trend line, right? Boy, testing a lot of trend lines here with a lot of these different sectors. So definitely some weakness out there. Caution is advised. Maybe roll back the size of your positions especially if you're trying to go long. Maybe roll back the size of those starters and be cautious. That is definitely the tone for the week. Now, is this going to be a long, extended pullback? Who knows? We can get some vicious snapbacks, some bounce backs. If we get some real big drawdowns, you can get those nice snapbacks that create some short-term trading opportunities. Doesn't mean that we're going to go right back up and retest the highs. It could be a backing and filling type of situation, but increased volatility isn't necessarily a bad thing if you have the ability to take short-term trading opportunities. All right, so let's take a look at T2108 and T2107 and even T2106. We'll look at all three of those real quick. So T2108, percentage of stocks above the 40-day moving average. Remember, 20 and below, things are probably getting a bit overdone to the downside. 70 and above, things are probably getting a bit overdone to the upside, right? So we've been fiddle in the middle for a while, starting to pull back here. Could be heading down towards that 20 mark, get below there, and that could be the opportunity to jump into some names, look in anticipation of a nice snapback opportunity. Let's take a look at T2107, which is the amount of stocks over the 200-day. That's also pulling back here. So, you know, so there's definitely some weakness out there. And then let's look at the fear chart, the McClellan oscillator. Minus 93. That is not in any way, shape, or form extreme, right? We can get down to negative 300, and then you've got some real fear out there, and could be also looking at potential opportunity for a short-term intense snapback, right? So things are get really overdone when you get below the 180, 200, in the 200s, and almost 300. Things are probably a bit overdone and could be looking at a pretty intense snapback. So we're not there yet, but we're kind of heading in that direction. All right, let's take a look at this week's stocks to watch. Like I said, it's not the full list for the pro members, but there is a decent amount of stocks on this list. They're all earnings related. TEUM. You know, the stock has been kind of a pop and flopper. One thing I will say is if the markets overall are weak and you have a small cap stock, or, you know, a smaller float stock that reports a good earnings report or gives really good guidance, if the overall markets are pulling back and that stock is moving higher, it's going to attract more eyes, right? Because it's going to be bucking the market. So those things sometimes can have some really intense moves in a crappy market. So TEUM, smaller float stock, actually been consolidating here. I think there's a short report out on this thing. You know, I had a double bottom and then bounced. It's above the 50-day moving average, consolidating right there. Actually, I think it's got the 50. Do we have the 200-day there as well? I don't know. Let's see. Yeah, I think we've got a cluster of moving averages here that it seems to be sitting on. So we might get a pop out of TEUM. Could be a trading opportunity. Worth keeping an eye on it through earnings. WPRT. These guys report earnings. Let me see when they report. Actually, let's see when TM reports and WPRT. TM reports Tuesday after the close, and Westport reports Thursday after the close. Now, Westport has been in consolidation mode just below the $3 holla. Now, Westport, I don't think is a very thin stock. I think it's actually fairly thick. They have an F10 registration that they put out in February for 250 million. 250 million. I don't know if that was shares or dollars, but they have an F1 registration out there, so keep that in mind. But a break over 3, this could be a short-term trading opportunity. Kind of got a cup with handle thing going on here. Area of potential price support right here at about 275. So you've got a decent area to trade against. Worth keeping an eye on this one. Could be a short-term trading opportunity. May get some action into the earnings. May get a pop after earnings, right? I wouldn't hold it through earnings, but worth at least having on the radar. Actually trades pretty decent volume as well. BHC. So, you know, there has been some nice insider buying activity in the $23 range. 25,000 shares. CEO Papa bought some shares. So there has been some good insider buying activity. It's sitting on top of the 50-day moving average. It's a thicker stock. This is a much thicker stock. Now, the sector is not all that hot. You know, if it breaks below the 50-day, you could look for an opportunity maybe for a swing in the 20. I'm looking at the $20 and $21 down to, you know, $20 range as potential support for a bounce. Stochastics are starting to curl to the downside. But I think in the $19, $21 range, this could be interesting for a long-term hold consideration. It could be an opportunity for a dip or a starter buy. PLUG, this tends to be a pop and flopper. You do have a potential double top on this one. It's below the 50-day moving average. You do have the 50 that is above the 200-day, which I like to see. 200-day, looking for that to hold as support. When do these guys report? They report Tuesday before the open, right? 2 could be support. If they reported decent earnings, I wouldn't chase a gap up on this thing, but worth keeping an eye on for a trading opportunity. Plug. APPS, full disclosure, I own APPS. I've owned it for a long time. It's had a very nice run. Actually, I just sold some lotto. So I had a lotto position. I added to that position. And then I just sold some shares Friday ahead of earnings. But I still have a lotto position in case they report good earnings and take out the $6 holla. I mean, this thing has had an amazing run. I actually would love it to pull back, right? I would love to have it pull back to like $3, the 200-day moving average. That would be, breaking this trend line, but I would view that as an opportunity to get back in and build up my position. Again, I just have a small piece left, but APPS has a very good look on it. Let's take a look on the weekly. This is a big spot, and it's part of the reason why I sold some of the shares, right? This could be a really big spot of potential resistance to try and get through the $6. If it can take out 6 with conviction, that then could become the support area, right? What was resistance could be support, and we're going back to 2013 on this as resistance. So big area, big area. Pull back to $2.75, $3, or $2.50, somewhere in that area. I'm very interested, especially if earnings are still strong and they give good guidance. I would look at any pullback, significant pullback, as an opportunity to build up my position in APPS. Disney, right? Big name reporting this week, and look, I think Disney is one of the stocks that you want to buy and just park it away in your 401k or your IRA for a long-term hold investment. But it would be awesome if Disney were to pull back to the 200-day, or maybe even pull back to this 118. Now, I'm not saying that it's going to do that. I actually think they're probably going to report a very strong earnings report, and then they've got their streaming service, which I think is coming out in September, so they should have some news about that. But pull back to 130 or so, maybe that's an opportunity to start to dip. If it were to pull back to 117, then you look to add. I don't know. It's flirting with. I think this is. Yeah, it's all-time highs, right? So. Big thick stock, right? If the markets roll over and these guys maybe disappoint on earnings, which I don't think they're going to do, but if they did and this thing pulls back to 117, I think that's a real opportunity for a long-term investment. ROKU has been this is a smaller float. It's been a momentum stock. They're reporting earnings on Wednesday after the close. Disney is Tuesday after the close. ROKU, it's testing this 50-day as support. These guys disappoint. It's had a pretty amazing run. Could see some weakness and pullback maybe to the 75 area. If you're short biased, or you got maybe a potential double top here, right around 112 on ROKU. Takes out 112. This thing has no overhead resistance. Worth keeping an eye on ROKU for a potential short-term trading opportunity, either long or short. GWPH. So I'm not necessarily interested in trading GWPH. but I am interested in how it might impact the sector. Now, GWPH itself is at a very interesting area of potential support. You got the 200-day moving average here. Um, you've got potential price support. If it breaks below that, that could be problematic for GWPH and could be problematic for the entire space. And I really am not crazy about the stochastics on it. Stochastics have curled to the downside, but I am interested to see how that name does, mainly for the sector. REGN, another one as a potential short. Look, you've got a potential double bottom test here, double bottom bounce, right, on this REGN. And this 280 could be support. Uh, it's trying to get above the 50-day moving average, and if these guys disappoint and guide, this is a big area of potential support. It breaks down below that. That could be problematic for REGN and maybe present a short opportunity. So keep an eye on that. Um, if they report good earnings and a good guide, then maybe you get a pop up into the 340 area. So worth keeping an eye on REGN. ARWR, great looking setup on the daily here. Look at this flag on the daily, trying to hold this 20-day moving average as potential support. You've got a rising 50-day, rising 200-day. What I don't necessarily care for is the fact that it's so far away from the 200-day moving average. If they disappoint, maybe you get a pullback here, but this is a big spot that it just broke through, right? Look at the big cup and handle on the daily, and it just broke through a big area of potential resistance. Next area of real resistance, I think, is somewhere around the $36 area. So worth keeping an eye on ARWR, probably more of a swing type play than a day trade. And let's see what else you got going on. I'm almost done here. This is a small list. I think I've got about 30 stocks for the pro members to keep an eye on. I want to explain that too real quick. So, the purpose of the watch list is not so that I bombard you with so many stocks that you can't watch them all, because that can be very challenging, right? But there are certain situations, certain stocks, if you're a day trader, some that may present a day trading opportunity. There are some that may present a swing opportunity, and there's some that present maybe a long-term investment opportunity, and everybody has their different style. I just point out stocks that maybe have a catalyst that is coming up, that maybe have a nice looking technical setup, and that creates an opportunity for you to find a stock to keep an eye on. You go through the list, maybe not all of them appeal to you, but one or two fit your style. That's really what it's all about. So, all right, ARWR, that looks pretty interesting. DBX Dropbox, they report Thursday after the close. Testing the, actually kind of broke below the 208. Now, here's what's interesting about Dropbox. It could be attempting to break this long-term trend line. It popped over it. We are now sitting right here back on top of that trend line. Maybe this acts as support for it for a bounce. Worth keeping an eye on it Thursday after the close for a potential trading opportunity if they have a good beat. HEAR, Turtle Beach, full disclosure, I own it. So look, this thing had an amazing run. It's a small float, big short interest in this name. Don't know if it's still as big as it was, but there was a big short interest. Shorts have been right for a while. Insiders sold when it was up over in the 20s, and insiders just started picking up shares back down here in the 10s. So I think that's somewhat interesting. If this thing breaks down, if it breaks below 950, heads back down into this 8 and change area, provided that they give good earnings and they give good guidance, I could be looking to add to the position. It's more of a long-term play for me. I did very well in it. I was in it before it had this huge run, and now I've got just a small piece. And you think about Fortnite and the kid winning $16 million. I don't think that gaming is going anywhere. I think that trend is going to continue, and these guys are one of the number one suppliers of headphones, and now they're in keyboards and mice, and I think that sector is just going to continue to grow. So worth keeping an eye on this one. They report Thursday after the close. Small float, big short interest. If they can beat the street, then that one could get very, very interesting. All right, and that is it for the free list of stocks to watch. If you are interested in becoming a member over at Alpha Wolf Trading, come check us out. We have a free chat room on Discord, and then for the pro members, actually, we have a live voice chat room where everyone gets to chime in. It's not just one person talking, everybody listening. I like to have an open forum where everybody can communicate with each other. Sometimes it gets a little hairy, but for the most part, it's pretty fantastic. So, all right, that's it. Good luck trading this week. Remember, cautious, cautious, cautious. Be careful out there, and I'll see you all next week. Good luck trading this week.